So you mentioned the other cases. There's at least 3 other criminal cases. You have the 2 brought by the special prosecutor, the case in Georgia, January 6th, classified documents, obstruction of justice. What do you think, if you were advising the former president, which obviously you're not, which would you be most concerned about?
I'd be most concerned about the document case in Mar-a-Lago, because from what I can see, when it first came out, a lot of Republicans manned the ramparts and were dumping all over the FBI and the government. And as the facts have come out, as I suggested when I spoke about it, the FBI was opposed to conducting the search. They weren't involved in launching the search. But also, those steps were taken after a long period, about 1.5 years, of trying to get the documents from him, which he had no claim to. He had no claim to those documents, especially the classified documents. They belonged to the government. And so I think he was jerking the government around, and they subpoenaed it, and they tried to jawbone him into delivery of the documents. But the government is investigating the extent to which games were played, and there was obstruction in keeping the documents from them. And I think that's a serious potential case. I think they probably have some very good evidence there.
And he's also unlikely to bring a case that he thinks he's going to lose. What do you think the likelihood is, at the end of the day, that we're actually going to see Donald Trump convicted and sentenced to prison?
Well, I don't think anything's going to happen before a nomination is made, and even perhaps until the election, the 24 election. This stuff is going to drag out through 24, and it's going to stymie and disrupt the whole Republican primary process. And I think part of, as I say, I think part of the reasoning behind it is that they know this is a red flag to a big portion of Trump's base, and that they're going to rally to him because they feel that this is persecution, and that will strengthen Trump's hand throughout the process. I also think, though, as far as the general election is concerned, it will gravely weaken Trump. He's already, I think, a weak candidate that would lose, but I think this sort of assures it.
When even Bill Barr, the guy who fell over himself carrying water for Trump as Attorney General, concedes that the guy doesn't have a leg to stand on legally, I think that pretty effectively sums up Trump's fortunes here. And Barr points primarily to the special counsel's ongoing investigation into the stolen classified documents at Mar-a-Lago, even invoking all of those Republicans who sprinted to Trump's side and obediently decried the FBI and the DOJ. But the facts surrounding this case are actually incredibly simple. Trump stole hundreds of classified documents from the White House. The National Archives requested that they be returned. Trump refused. They issued a subpoena, which Trump ignored. Trump then had his lawyers attest falsely that all of those documents had been returned. The National Archives knew that that wasn't true. They brought a request for a search warrant in front of a federal magistrate who agreed with them. The search warrant was executed by the FBI, which uncovered exactly the documents that the National Archives was looking for, and that Donald Trump had pretended were already returned. Pretty cut and dry, which is why even Bill Barr can read the writing on the wall on this one. And just one point here for those who are welcoming Bill Barr onto the right side of history. Bill Barr is one of the principal architects of Trump's perception that the rules don't apply to him. Remember, when Robert Mueller issued this final report on Russian collusion, here's how Bill Barr interpreted the special counsel's decision not to indict for obstruction.
But I will say that when we met with him, Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein and I met with him, along with Ed O'Callaghan, who is the principal associate deputy. On March 5th, we specifically asked him about the OLC opinion and whether or not he was taking the position that he would have found a crime but for the existence of the OLC opinion. And he made it very clear several times that that was not his position.
And yet here's what Mueller actually said.
If we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so.
In other words, Bill Barr straight up lied about what the Mueller report said before allowing the report to be released to the public because he wanted to carry water for Trump. So I get that now that Trump is out of office, Barr is trying to rehab his image, but Barr is as much an architect of the Trump-era corruption as anyone else, and no amount of revisionist history is going to change that. In fact, I would argue that while Barr is clearly trying to help himself, another reason is evident in the original clip when he discusses Trump's weakness in the general election. Barr is a partisan actor and is only interested in his party taking power, and he's recognizing that Trump is going to make that more difficult. That's why he seems to be jumping ship now, not because of any principled stance, but because he wants to notch political victories, and Trump's legal troubles make that more difficult for him. At his core, Bill Barr is a Republican hack trying to present himself as anything but. Need more proof that this has nothing to do with principles and everything to do with carrying water for the Republican Party? A few weeks back, Barr was on air, went through all of the reasons why Trump's actions were indictable, and when asked point blank if he would vote for Trump again over a Democrat, here's what he had to say.
You say in your book it's time for the party to move on from Trump. Liz Cheney has said he is not fit to serve and should not be ever near the Oval Office again. Do you agree with that?
Well, I certainly have made it clear I don't think he should be our nominee, and I'm going to, support somebody else for the nomination.
But if he is the nominee and you have your choice is Donald Trump or whoever's running on the Democratic side, would you vote for him?
Because I believe that the greatest threat to the country is the progressive agenda being pushed by the Democratic Party. It's inconceivable to me that I wouldn't vote for the Republican nominee.
So even if he lied about the election and threatened democracy, as you write in your book, it's better than a Democrat.
It's hard to project what the facts are going to turn out to be 3 years hence, but as of now, it's hard for me to conceive that I wouldn't vote for the Republican nominee.
I mean, dear God, if this guy isn't the absolute definition of a party-over-country partisan hack, I don't know what is. So in case you thought that somehow Bill Barr had seen the light, just remember that the guy who carried water for Trump's corruption is still the same guy that we're seeing today. All of which is to say, none of those people stand for anything other than power. Trump may be inconvenient for them at the moment, but as soon as he's the best they've got, they'll come crawling back because it was never about taking a principled stance. It was simply about helping themselves politically. And for the Republican Party, that's all it will ever be. A point that Jamie Raskin laid out far more eloquently than I ever could.
What a scandal for Abraham Lincoln's party. He started that party as a party of union. He hated the know-nothings. He hated the racism. His Lyceum address was all about the dangers of mob violence after the attack on Elijah Lovejoy, an abolitionist newspaper editor. And he said, if downfall ever comes to America, it will not be from monsters abroad. It will be from the evil within. And he was clearly thinking about the slave power and racism in the country, the same forces, the same kind of forces that have arrayed themselves today against the constitutional order.
Before you go, a quick announcement. I've started a Spanish YouTube channel. Democrats desperately need to be able to appeal to Spanish-speaking audiences, so this is me doing my part. To help that channel get going in the algorithm so that we can finally start spreading our progressive message and breaking the conservative stranglehold on Spanish-speaking media, please subscribe and watch a few videos. The link to that channel, called Brian Tyler Cohen Espanol, is right here on this screen. And of course, to see more of my content in English, make sure to subscribe to this channel as well. The link is also right here on this screen. Thanks so much for watching.